What if I told you that every single word you speak, every thought you hold, and every emotion you release has the power to literally reshape the reality around you? That the ancient secret to transforming your life isn't hidden in some distant monastery or expensive course, but lives right there in your voice, waiting to be awakened. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Right now, as you watch this, you're unknowingly wielding one of the most powerful forces in the universe, the creative power of your consciousness expressed through words. Yet most of us have completely forgotten how to use it. We've traded this divine gift for something far more destructive, the habit of unconscious cursing, endless complaining, and speaking from fear rather than faith. Has this ever happened to you? You wake up and immediately start describing everything. That's wrong. The weather, your job, your relationships, your finances. You repeat these complaints so naturally that you don't even realize you're actively creating more of what you don't want. Every time you say, "Nothing ever goes right for me," or "This always happens," you're not just venting, you're literally programming your reality. But what if there was another way? What if instead of describing your problems, you could decree your solutions? What if instead of cursing your circumstances, you could bless them into transformation? This isn't about positive thinking or empty affirmations. This is about rediscovering a forgotten spiritual technology that the ancient mystics knew and that modern science is only beginning to understand. The power of blessing, not as a religious ritual, but as a conscious spiritual act that affirms the presence of divine order exactly where your physical senses perceive only chaos and limitation. Stay with me until the end of this video, because what you're about to discover might surprise you. We've been taught that our words are just sounds, that our thoughts are private, and that our emotions don't really affect anything beyond ourselves. But quantum physics and ancient wisdom are converging to reveal a startling truth. Consciousness is the fundamental building block of reality, and your voice is the instrument through which that consciousness creates. Think about it. The universe itself was spoken into existence. Let there be light, and there was light. The creative force that formed galaxies and stars is the same force that flows through you every time you speak. The question isn't whether your words have power. The question is whether you're using that power consciously or letting it run wild. Every master teacher throughout history understood this secret. They didn't beg the universe for change. They declared it. They didn't speak from lack. They spoke from abundance. They didn't describe problems. They proclaimed solutions, and in doing so, they demonstrated something extraordinary. When you align your consciousness with divine truth and speak from that place of knowing, matter itself responds. But here's where it gets really interesting, and where most people miss the mark entirely. Most people treat their voice like it's just another bodily function, something that happens automatically without any real consequence. They speak carelessly, react emotionally, and wonder why. Their life feels chaotic and out of control, but the hidden truth behind every spiritual tradition reveals something extraordinary. Your voice carries divine authority, not metaphorically, not symbolically, but literally. There's something within you. Call it your higher self, your divine spark, the Christ consciousness that's been waiting patiently for your permission to act. Every time you speak with genuine faith and conscious intention, you're giving that inner authority consent to reshape your reality. Think about the most powerful transformations you've witnessed in your life. Behind every single one, there was a moment when someone made a decision to speak differently, to declare something new, to break the pattern of unconscious complaining. This isn't about religion or any specific belief system. This is about recognizing a fundamental law of existence that operates whether you believe in it or not. The same intelligence that orchestrates your heartbeat grows your hair and heals your cuts is constantly listening to the vibrations you emit through your words. When you speak from fear, scarcity, and limitation, that intelligence dutifully creates more experiences that match those frequencies. But when you learn to speak from love, abundance, and possibility, something miraculous begins to unfold. Here's what nobody tells you about this transformation process. There is literally nothing in your life that cannot be changed through this practice. Your health, your relationships, your finances, your career, your family dynamics, even your past memories, everything responds to sincere blessing when combined with proper consciousness. I've witnessed people completely reverse chronic illnesses by changing how they spoke to their bodies. I've seen broken relationships heal when someone decided to bless instead of curse. I've watched financial situations turn around when people stopped declaring lack and started acknowledging abundance. The journey isn't about perfection or getting it right every time. It's about becoming aware of the incredible responsibility and power you carry in your mouth. Every morning when you wake up, you have a choice. You can either describe your life as you see it with your physical eyes, or you can decree your life as you know it to be in the spiritual realm. You can either repeat the old stories that keep you stuck, or you can begin speaking new realities into existence. What makes this practice so profound is its immediate accessibility. You don't need special training, expensive equipment, or years of study. You simply need to pause before you speak and ask yourself, am I about to bless or curse this situation? The impact of this single shift in awareness will surprise you. When you start blessing your challenges instead of complaining about them, when you start speaking to your body with love instead of criticism, when you start declaring good over your finances instead of lack, the world around you begins to shift in ways that seem almost magical. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding the mechanics behind this transformation is crucial for your success. There's a specific way that consciousness interacts with matter, and once you grasp this connection, you'll never speak carelessly again. The breakthrough revelation that changes everything is this. It's not the actual words you speak that create miracles. Anyone can repeat positive affirmations or recite prayers, but most people experience little to no transformation because they're missing the crucial element, the consciousness behind the words, the awareness, the faith, the inner knowing that activates spiritual law is what makes the difference between empty repetition and life-changing declarations. Think about it from a scientific perspective. When you speak, you're creating vibrations that ripple through the quantum field. But those vibrations carry more than just sound waves. They carry the emotional frequency, the mental clarity, and the spiritual conviction of the person speaking them. This is why two people can say the exact same words and get completely different results. One speaks from doubt, hoping something might change, while the other speaks from absolute certainty, knowing that change is already happening. The hidden truth behind every spiritual breakthrough is this fundamental shift in approach. Most people have been trained to beg the universe for what they want. They approach prayer and positive thinking from a place of lack, pleading with a distant God to maybe, possibly, if they're worthy enough, grant their requests. But this entire mindset is backwards and actually blocks the very results they're seeking. When you truly understand the power you carry, you realize that blessing is not about begging, it's about declaring truth. You're not asking for permission from some external authority. You're recognizing and announcing what already exists in the spiritual realm. You're not hoping for change. You're speaking change into manifestation with the same authority that the universe itself used to create galaxies and stars. This mindset transformation requires a complete revolution in how you see yourself and your relationship with the creative force of existence. You're not a powerless victim hoping for rescue. You're a co-creator with divine intelligence, equipped with the same creative mechanism that spoke worlds into being. When you speak from this place of spiritual authority, Your words carry a different frequency entirely. Behind the scenes of every major life transformation, there's always this moment of recognition where someone stops speaking like a beggar and starts declaring like a king. They stop describing their problems and start proclaiming their solutions. They stop asking, "Why me?" and start declaring, "This too can be blessed." The journey from victim consciousness to creator consciousness happens one word at a time, one declaration at a time. What's fascinating is how quickly your external circumstances begin to respond once you make this internal shift. The universe doesn't distinguish between big requests and small ones. It simply responds to the vibration you consistently emit. When you speak with genuine faith rather than desperate hope, when you declare from knowing rather than from needing, when you bless from authority rather than from anxiety, everything starts to align. The impact goes far beyond your personal experience. When you learn to speak with this kind of conscious power, you become a healing presence for everyone around you. Your words begin to lift others. Your declarations create space for miracles in your family, your workplace, your community. You're not just changing your own life, you're becoming a catalyst for transformation wherever you go. But here's where most people get stuck, and it's a crucial distinction that determines whether this practice becomes life-changing or just another spiritual technique that eventually gets abandoned. The difference lies in understanding exactly how to align your consciousness with truth before you speak. The fundamental shift that unlocks everything happens when you realize this life-changing truth. God doesn't need convincing. The divine source of all creation has already given you everything you could ever need. Health, abundance, love, peace, purpose. It's all already yours in the spiritual realm. The table is set, the banquet is prepared, the kingdom has been handed over. What's missing isn't God's willingness to help you. What's missing is your recognition and acceptance of what's already been provided. This revelation completely transforms how you approach blessing and prayer. Instead of spending your energy trying to persuade a reluctant universe to maybe grant your requests, you begin to understand that blessing activates presence and calls forth order. You're not begging for something that doesn't exist. You're recognizing and announcing what already is. You're not trying to convince God to act. You're aligning yourself with divine action that's constantly flowing. Think about the story of the centurion who approached Jesus about his sick servant. This man understood authority in a way that amazed even the master teacher. He didn't ask Jesus to come to his house, perform a ceremony, or prove his power. He simply said, "Just say the word, and my servant will be healed." He spoke. As someone who recognized that when authority speaks, reality responds. No drama, no begging, no spectacle, just quiet confidence in the power of the word backed by divine truth. This is the mindset transformation that changes everything about how you speak. When you truly grasp that your word is backed by heaven, you stop speaking from desperation and start declaring from certainty. You don't need to shout, repeat yourself endlessly, or work up emotional intensity. You simply need to speak with the quiet authority of someone who knows that when they align with truth and declare it, the universe listens. The journey to this level of spiritual confidence requires releasing old patterns of thinking that keep you feeling separated from your source. Most people have been conditioned to believe they're unworthy, that they need to earn divine favor, that they must suffer before they can receive blessing. But these beliefs actually block the very flow they're hoping to access. When you speak from unworthiness, you're declaring separation. When you beg from lack, you're affirming scarcity. When you doubt your authority, you're disconnecting from the very power that could transform your situation. Behind the scenes of every miraculous transformation is someone who made a crucial decision. They decided to stop questioning whether they had the right to speak with power and started exercising that right. They stopped wondering if God would listen and started speaking as someone who knows they're heard. They stopped asking for permission and started taking their place as conscious co-creators with divine intelligence. The impact of this shift extends far beyond personal transformation. When you speak with this kind of backed authority, you're not just changing your own circumstances, you're contributing to the elevation of collective consciousness. Every time someone moves from begging to blessing, from pleading to declaring, from fear to faith, they're helping to anchor a higher vibration on the planet. What's beautiful about this process is how natural it becomes once you understand the mechanics. You're not pretending to have power you don't possess. You're recognizing and exercising power that's been yours all along. You're not trying to become something new. You're remembering what you've always been. The authority to speak life, blessing, and transformation into existence isn't something you earn. It's something you accept. Now, let me show you exactly how this principle works in the most challenging situations, because it's one thing to speak with authority when everything is going well, and another entirely to maintain that consciousness when facing real difficulties. When you really understand what happens every time you speak, it becomes impossible to ever use your voice carelessly again. Modern science is finally catching up to what ancient mystics have always known. Words are not just sounds floating through the air. They are vibration that shapes matter itself. Every time you speak, you're literally sending waves of energy into the quantum field that surrounds and interpenetrates everything you see. Here's where it gets absolutely fascinating. At the most fundamental level, everything you can touch, see, or experience is energy organized by ideas. That chair you're sitting on, the device you're watching this on, even your own body. It's all consciousness expressing itself through form. And how does consciousness organize energy into form? Through the power of the spoken word. The universe itself was created through sound, through vibration, through the word that carried divine intention into manifestation. This isn't mystical theory anymore. Quantum physics has demonstrated that consciousness affects matter at the subatomic level. The observer effect shows us that the very act of conscious observation changes the behavior of particles. But here's what most people don't realize. Speaking is consciousness in action. When you speak with awareness and intention, you're not just observing reality, you're actively participating in its creation. Think about the profound implications of this revelation. Every word you speak is literally programming the energy field around you. When you say, "I'm so tired of this situation," you're sending a specific vibrational signature into the quantum field that organizes more experiences matching that frequency. When you declare, "I bless this challenge and know it's working for my highest good," you're transmitting an entirely different pattern that calls forth harmonious solutions. The transformation happens because the blessed word acts upon invisible forces that shape visible reality. Before anything appears in your physical experience, it first exists as organized energy in the realm of possibility. Your words, when spoken with conscious intention, act like tuning forks that resonate with specific frequencies in this field of infinite potential. You're literally calling certain realities into manifestation while releasing others back into the unformed. This is why people who learn to speak with awareness often report that their life becomes almost eerily synchronistic. Doors open at just the right moment. The right people appear exactly when needed. Solutions emerge from unexpected places. They're not experiencing random luck. They're witnessing the natural result of aligned consciousness expressing itself through the creative power of speech. The journey to mastering this principle requires understanding that your voice is far more than a communication tool. It's a creative instrument of divine consciousness. Every time you speak, you're either building or demolishing, blessing or cursing, creating order or contributing to chaos. There's no neutral ground when it comes to the power of your words, because vibration is always active, always organizing energy, always shaping the invisible template of your experience. Behind the scenes of every major breakthrough in human consciousness, there's been someone who understood this connection between word and reality. They recognized that consciousness doesn't just observe the world, it participates in creating it through the vibrational patterns it emits. When you align your speech with this understanding, you step into your role as a conscious co-creator rather than a passive victim of circumstances. What makes this practice so immediately accessible is that you don't need to understand all the quantum mechanics to experience the results. You simply need to become aware of the creative responsibility that comes with every word you speak and start choosing your vibrations intentionally. Now let me reveal the specific mechanism that makes some people's words incredibly powerful while others seem to speak into empty air, because there's a crucial element that determines whether your words create transformation or just add to the noise. The moment you walk into a room, before you say a single word, before you even make eye contact with anyone, something invisible but incredibly powerful is already happening. Your vibration speaks before your mouth does. Your energetic field affects spaces and people even without verbal communication. Think about times when you've instantly felt comfortable or uncomfortable around someone without any logical reason. You were picking up on their vibrational signature, the cumulative frequency of their thoughts, emotions, and consciousness patterns. This revelation transforms everything about how you approach personal transformation, because it means you're constantly broadcasting who you are, what you believe, and what you expect from life. People around you are unconsciously responding to this energetic transmission long before you speak. Situations are organizing themselves around the frequency you're consistently emitting. Opportunities are either drawn to you or repelled by you based on this invisible force field that surrounds your consciousness. Here's where the real magic happens. Matter responds to the highest vibration. This is a fundamental spiritual law that operates as consistently as gravity. When you enter a space carrying the vibration of blessing, peace, and conscious awareness, everything in that environment begins to shift toward harmony. It's not something you have to force or manipulate. It happens naturally, because elevated consciousness transforms lower frequencies. The journey to understanding this principle reveals one of the most empowering secrets about human potential. You're not just reacting to your environment, you're actively influencing it every moment through the quality of consciousness you maintain. When you walk into a tense meeting carrying inner peace, that peace begins to permeate the room. When you approach a difficult conversation from a place of love rather than defense, that higher vibration literally changes the dynamic of the interaction. Behind the scenes of every unexplained positive shift in group dynamics, workplace atmospheres, or family relationships, there's usually someone who decided to raise their personal vibration rather than trying to change everyone else. They stopped waiting for external conditions to improve and started broadcasting the change they wanted to experience. The impact is often immediate and undeniable, though most people don't understand what's actually happening. This is why some individuals seem to have an almost magnetic effect on positive outcomes. They've learned to consciously cultivate and maintain higher frequency states. They understand that their internal vibration is the primary factor determining their external experience. When challenges arise, instead of dropping into reactivity and lower consciousness, they use the situation as an opportunity to demonstrate the transformative power of elevated awareness. The hidden truth that changes everything is this: you don't have to wait for perfect conditions to start operating from this higher frequency. You can begin right where you are, with whatever challenges you're currently facing. The decision to maintain conscious vibration in the midst of difficulty is actually more powerful than maintaining it when everything is easy. You're literally training yourself to become a source of transformation rather than a victim of circumstances. What's fascinating is how quickly your external world begins to respond. Once you make this internal shift a consistent practice, the same people who used to trigger you start behaving differently around you. Conflicts that seemed impossible to resolve begin finding natural solutions. Opportunities that were invisible suddenly become obvious. You're not changing other people or manipulating situations. You're simply allowing the natural law of vibrational harmony to work through your elevated consciousness. Now, I want to explore the most profound application of this principle because there's a specific way to use this understanding that can transform even the most challenging aspects of your life, including those painful experiences from your past that still affect your present. There's a spiritual law operating in your life right now that's as precise and unfailing as gravity, yet most people are completely unaware of its constant influence. The law of reflection operates every moment of every day, ensuring that everything you project outward returns to you multiplied, regardless of whether you believe in it or not. This isn't karma in the traditional sense of punishment and reward. It's a mechanical principle of consciousness that responds to the vibrational frequency you consistently emit. Here's what makes this revelation so transformative. What you bless begins to bless you. When you speak words of elevation over someone else's situation, when you see the good in people who are struggling, when you declare prosperity over another person's challenges, you're not just being kind. You're creating channels of elevation that inevitably manifest in your own life. The universe operates like a perfect mirror, reflecting back the quality of energy you send out into the world. The hidden truth behind this principle explains why some people seem to live charmed lives while others struggle constantly despite working just as hard. It's not about luck, connections, or even talent. It's about understanding how the law of reflection responds to your consistent inner dialogue and outward expressions. When you habitually bless others, seek their highest good, and speak words of encouragement and possibility, you're programming the cosmic mirror to reflect those same experiences back into your reality. Think about the profound implications for your daily interactions. Every time you look at someone with judgment, criticism, or resentment, you're sending that vibration into the universal field and essentially ordering more experiences that will trigger those same emotions in you. But when you make the conscious decision to bless someone, even silently, even someone who has hurt or disappointed you, you're redirecting that cosmic mirror to reflect blessing back into your own experience. This transformation happens because you're working with the fundamental architecture of existence. The law of reflection isn't a spiritual philosophy you can choose to follow or ignore. It's a mechanical aspect of how consciousness creates reality. Your thoughts, words, and emotions are constantly being broadcast into the quantum field, and that field responds by organizing experiences that match your dominant frequencies. The journey to mastering this principle requires a complete shift in how you perceive your relationship with others. Instead of seeing people as separate from you, you begin to recognize that everyone in your experience is actually serving as a mirror, reflecting back some aspect of your own consciousness. This doesn't mean you're responsible for other people's choices, but it does mean that your internal response to their behavior is creating your future experiences. Behind the scenes of every miraculous life transformation, there's someone who discovered this secret and began deliberately blessing others as a way of blessing themselves. They stopped waiting for people to deserve their good thoughts and started giving them freely, knowing that the law of reflection would ensure those blessings returned multiplied. They found that the more generously they blessed others, the more abundantly they were blessed in return. What's beautiful about this practice is how it completely eliminates the need to manipulate, control, or change anyone else to improve your own life. Instead of trying to get people to treat you better, you start treating them better in your mind and watching how that shift transforms every relationship. Instead of waiting for your circumstances to improve, you begin blessing other people's circumstances and allowing the law of reflection to upgrade your own reality. The impact extends far beyond personal benefit. When you consistently operate from this understanding, you become a source of elevation for everyone around you. Your presence begins to lift others not through what you say or do, but through the blessing consciousness you maintain toward them. Now, let me show you the most powerful application of this principle, because there's a specific practice that can transform even your most difficult relationships and challenging circumstances faster than you might imagine possible. The most subtle yet devastating mistake that blocks transformation is something almost everyone does unconsciously throughout their day. Judgment disrupts the flow of blessing more effectively than any external obstacle ever could. Every time you mentally separate people into categories, good and bad, worthy and unworthy, deserving and undeserving, you're essentially building energetic dams that prevent the natural flow of divine energy through your consciousness. Here's what happens behind the scenes when you judge. Your mind creates an artificial barrier between you and the person or situation you're observing. That barrier doesn't just affect them, it completely blocks your ability to be a clear channel for blessing. It's like trying to pour water through a kinked hose. The flow gets restricted, the pressure builds up, and very little actually reaches its destination. When you judge others, you're unknowingly cutting yourself off from the very source of transformation you're seeking to access. The revolutionary insight that changes everything is this: blessing doesn't change other people or external circumstances directly. Instead, it transforms your inner relationship with them, and that internal shift is what creates all the external changes you experience. When you stop judging someone and start blessing them, you're not manipulating them into behaving differently. You're freeing yourself from the energetic entanglement that was keeping both of you stuck in old patterns. Think about a difficult relationship in your life right now. The person who triggers you, who seems impossible to deal with, who always pushes your buttons. Your natural inclination is probably to judge their behavior, categorize them as problematic, and wish they would change. But here's the hidden truth. As long as you maintain that judgmental stance, you're energetically locked into the very dynamic you want to escape. The judgment itself becomes the prison that keeps the relationship stuck. The transformation happens when you make a radical decision to see that person differently, not because they deserve it based on their actions, but because you deserve to be free from the negative energy that judgment creates in your own consciousness. When you begin blessing someone you've been judging, something remarkable occurs in the invisible realm. The energetic charge between you neutralizes, the emotional reactivity dissolves, the automatic patterns that kept you both trapped in conflict begin to unravel. This doesn't mean you become naive or allow people to mistreat you. It means you respond from clarity and strength rather than from reactive judgment. You make decisions based on wisdom rather than emotional triggers. You maintain healthy boundaries without carrying the toxic energy of resentment and condemnation. The practical impact on your daily life is profound. Relationships that seemed hopeless begin to heal. Conflicts that felt permanent start resolving naturally. And people who used to drain your energy either transform around you or simply fade from your experience. Behind the scenes of every major breakthrough in human relationships, there's someone who decided to stop judging and start blessing. They discovered that their inner relationship with others was the key to transforming their outer experience. They realized that trying to change people through judgment and criticism was like pushing against a brick wall, but blessing them created an opening for genuine transformation to occur. The journey to mastering this principle requires recognizing that every person who triggers you is actually offering you a gift, the opportunity to practice unconditional blessing. The people who challenge you the most are often your greatest teachers. showing you exactly where your consciousness still needs to expand. When you can bless them sincerely, you've freed yourself from a limitation that was affecting every area of your life. Now, I want to reveal the most challenging yet liberating aspect of this practice, because there's one category of blessing that has the power to completely rewrite your entire life story, healing wounds you may have carried for years. The breakthrough moment that transforms blessing from a spiritual technique into a natural way of being happens when you stop forcing it and start allowing it. Blessing should flow naturally without effort, like breathing or your heartbeat. When you're truly aligned with divine consciousness, blessing becomes the soul's natural expression, not something you have to remember to do, but something that emerges spontaneously from your awakened state. Most people approach blessing backwards. They try to manufacture the right words, work up the right emotions, or follow the right formulas, and then wonder why it feels hollow or produces limited results. They're attempting to create blessing from the mind instead of allowing it to emerge from the soul. It's like trying to force a flower to bloom instead of providing the right conditions for natural flowering to occur. The hidden truth that changes everything is this: you must enter consciousness of oneness first. True blessing cannot emerge from a mindset of separation from the divine. As long as you see yourself as isolated from the source, struggling to connect with a distant God, your words will carry the vibration of that separation rather than the power of unified consciousness. You'll be speaking from lack, trying to reach abundance, from fear, trying to create love, from disconnection, trying to manifest unity. The transformation happens when you pause before speaking and remember a fundamental truth. God is not separate from you. The divine presence isn't somewhere out there waiting to be contacted. It's the very essence of your being, the consciousness through which you think, feel, and express. When you speak from this remembrance of oneness, your words carry an entirely different frequency. They're no longer your words trying to reach God, they're divine expression flowing through your unique perspective. This shift in consciousness changes everything about how blessing feels and how it affects reality. Instead of effortful attempts to create change, you experience effortless alignment with change that's already happening. Instead of hoping your words will be heard, you speak with the quiet confidence of someone who knows they're expressing truth. Instead of trying to convince the universe to respond, you become a clear channel through which universal intelligence can manifest. The journey to this level of natural blessing requires releasing the illusion that you're separate from the creative force of existence. Every time you feel disconnected, remember that separation is only a mental concept. It has no reality. In the spiritual realm, your breath is divine breath, your heartbeat is divine rhythm, your consciousness is divine awareness, expressing itself through your individual experience. When you truly understand this, blessing stops being something you do and becomes something you are. Behind the scenes of every person who seems to have natural spiritual power, there's someone who has made this fundamental shift from separation consciousness to oneness consciousness. They've stopped trying to reach God and started recognizing God as the very foundation of their being. They've stopped asking for divine guidance and started trusting that they are divine guidance in expression. They've stopped seeking spiritual connection and started living from spiritual connection. What makes this realization so immediately practical is how it transforms your daily experience. When you're operating from oneness consciousness, you don't have to stop and think about whether to bless a situation. Blessing flows naturally from your elevated state. When challenges arise, your first instinct isn't to resist or complain, but to recognize the divine intelligence working through the apparent difficulty. When you encounter difficult people, you automatically see their spiritual essence beneath their behavioral patterns. The impact on your external world is remarkable because you're no longer trying to change things from the outside. You're allowing transformation to emerge from the inside out. Your very In presence becomes a blessing because you're no longer broadcasting separation and struggle. You're emanating the peace, love, and wholeness that naturally arise when consciousness remembers its divine nature. Now let me share with you the most profound application of this understanding, because there's a specific area of life where this principle can create the most dramatic and lasting transformation. The most liberating revelation that frees you from spiritual struggle is this: blessing doesn't require specific emotions. You don't need to feel deeply moved, experience overwhelming gratitude, or generate intense love before your words carry power. Most people get trapped thinking they have to manufacture the right emotional state before they can bless effectively, but this approach actually blocks the very transformation they're seeking. True blessing depends on what you know spiritually, not what you feel emotionally. Think about this profound shift in understanding. You can bless someone when you're angry with them, not because you feel loving toward them in that moment, but because you know their spiritual nature transcends their current behavior. You can bless a difficult situation when you're afraid, not because fear has disappeared, but because you know divine intelligence is working through apparent chaos. You can bless your finances when you're worried about money, not because anxiety has vanished, but because you understand abundance as your spiritual inheritance. This transformation happens because spiritual knowing operates on a different level than emotional feeling. Emotions are temporary responses to external circumstances. Spiritual knowing is an unchanging recognition of divine truth. When you bless from what you know, rather than what you feel, your words carry the stability of eternal truth rather than the fluctuation of human emotion. The impact is far more powerful because you're not dependent on your mood or circumstances to access your creative authority. The journey to this level of spiritual maturity requires developing the ability to bless without conditions or control. This is where most people sabotage their own efforts without realizing it. They bless their relationships with the hidden expectation that the other person will change. They bless their health with the demand that symptoms disappear immediately. They bless their work with the requirement that specific opportunities manifest exactly as they envision them. But here's the hidden truth that unlocks everything. The moment you attach conditions to your blessing, you're no longer blessing, you're attempting to manipulate. True blessing means releasing the outcome to spirit rather than demanding specific results. It's saying, I bless this situation and trust divine intelligence to manifest the highest good for everyone involved, rather than, I bless this so that things will work out exactly the way I want them to. Behind the scenes of every miraculous transformation, there's someone who learned to bless without trying to control the process. They discovered that their job is to align with divine truth and speak it into the world, not to micromanage how that truth manifests in form. They realized that when they release control and trust the intelligence that orchestrates galaxies and grows trees, outcomes often exceed their limited human imagination. The impact of this approach extends far beyond getting what you want. It connects you to what you actually need for your highest evolution. Sometimes blessing a relationship leads to deeper intimacy. Sometimes it leads to graceful closure. Sometimes blessing your career opens unexpected doors. Sometimes it reveals that you're meant for an entirely different path. The key is trusting that divine intelligence knows the perfect way to respond to your blessing consciousness. What makes this practice so transformative is how it frees you from the exhausting cycle of trying to force outcomes through willpower and manipulation. Instead of spending your energy pushing against reality, you learn to work with the natural flow of universal intelligence. Instead of becoming frustrated when things don't happen according to your timeline, you develop faith in divine timing that always works for your ultimate benefit. The decision to bless without conditions also transforms your relationship with challenges and setbacks. When something doesn't unfold as expected, instead of Feeling like your blessing didn't work, you recognize that divine intelligence is orchestrating something even better than what your limited perspective could envision. Now, I want to explore the most challenging yet most healing application of this principle, because there's one area where unconditional blessing can literally rewrite your entire life story and free you from burdens you may have carried for years. The most profound and challenging application of blessing consciousness takes you into territory that most people desperately want to avoid: blessing what hurts. This isn't about pretending pain doesn't exist or covering wounds with spiritual band-aids. Blessing what hurts performs spiritual alchemy, the mysterious process of transforming the lead of suffering into the gold of wisdom, strength, and compassion. This is the highest form of healing available to human consciousness, yet it's also the path most people resist because it requires facing rather than fleeing. Here's the hidden truth that changes everything about your relationship with difficulty. Pain that isn't blessed remains bound. Those unhealed wounds, traumatic memories, losses that still ache, betrayals that still sting, when they're left unblessed, they continue speaking through your life in ways you might not even recognize. They show up as repetitive patterns in your relationships, persistent symptoms in your body, recurring challenges in your career, and limiting beliefs that seem impossible to shake. The transformation happens when you understand that blessing pain doesn't mean approving of what happened or pretending it was somehow good. It means recognizing that even your deepest wounds can become sources of strength when touched by divine consciousness. When you can look at your most difficult experiences and say, "I bless this memory, I bless the person I was then, I bless even what I don't understand," something profound shifts in the energetic field of your past. Think about the areas of your life where you feel stuck, where the same problems keep surfacing despite your best efforts to fix them. Behind the scenes of these persistent patterns, there's almost always an unblessed wound. Some experience that taught you to expect disappointment, to guard your heart, to believe you're not worthy of good things. These wounded places in your consciousness become like energetic magnets, unconsciously attracting experiences that confirm the old story. The journey to healing through blessing requires tremendous courage because it asks you to extend love to the very experiences that taught you to withhold it. It's the spiritual equivalent of choosing to bless your enemy, except the enemy is often your own painful past. When you can sincerely bless the father who wasn't present, the relationship that ended in betrayal, the dream that died, the innocence that was lost, you're not condoning what happened. You're freeing yourself from the prison of resentment and victimhood. What makes this practice so powerful is how it changes the vibration of your memories. Instead of carrying those experiences as sources of pain, limitation, and fear, they become testimonies to your resilience, wisdom, and capacity for growth. The same events remain in your history, but their meaning transforms completely. What once whispered, "You're not safe," begins to declare, "You survived and became stronger." What once said, "You can't trust anyone," starts to affirm, "You learned discernment and self-reliance." Behind the scenes of every profound personal transformation, there's someone who found the courage to bless their deepest wounds. They discovered that trying to heal while maintaining resentment toward their past is like trying to fill a bucket with holes in the bottom. The energy keeps leaking out through the unhealed places, but when those wounds are blessed, they seal, and the soul can finally hold the love, joy, and abundance it's meant to contain. The impact extends far beyond personal healing. When you transform your own pain through blessing, you become a source of hope for others who are struggling with similar wounds. Your very presence carries the vibration of possibility, proof that healing is possible, that wounds can become wisdom, that even the darkest chapters of life can contribute to a beautiful story. Now, I want to reveal how this principle of blessing extends into the most practical aspects of your daily life. because there's a way to create sacred space wherever you are, transforming even the most ordinary environments into sources of spiritual nourishment and peace. Write in the comments, "I bless my journey," if you're ready to transform your pain into wisdom through the power of conscious blessing. The revolution that transforms your entire daily experience begins with a simple recognition. Your environment can become an altar, not through expensive renovations, special decorations, or religious symbols, but through the consciousness that inhabits the space. Any room, any corner, any workplace can become sacred when you bring sacred awareness to it. The hidden truth is that spaces are incredibly responsive to the quality of consciousness present within them, and when you learn to consecrate your daily surroundings, you create a constant field of spiritual nourishment that supports your highest evolution. Most people wait for the perfect conditions to feel spiritual: the quiet retreat center, the beautiful cathedral, the pristine meditation room. But this approach keeps spirituality confined to special occasions and designated places. The transformation happens when you realize that wherever you are right now can become a temple if you decide to inhabit it with temple consciousness. Your kitchen table becomes an altar when you bless your meals there. Your bedroom becomes a sanctuary when you express gratitude before sleep. Your office becomes sacred space when you consecrate your work to service. The journey to creating sacred environment doesn't require changing anything external. It requires shifting something internal. When you stand in your living room and silently declare, "I consecrate this space to peace, love, and harmony," you're not performing empty ritual. You're literally programming the energetic field of that space with higher frequency vibrations. Spaces hold energy just like water holds flavor, and when you consistently bring blessed consciousness to an environment, that blessing becomes part of the atmosphere itself. Behind the scenes of every home that feels unusually peaceful, every workplace that seems surprisingly harmonious, every environment where people naturally feel uplifted, there's usually someone who has learned to consecrate their daily spaces. They understand that blessing your surroundings isn't about changing the furniture or the architecture. It's about changing the invisible qualities that determine how a space feels and how people behave within it. Think about the immediate impact this understanding can have on your daily experience. Instead of feeling drained by your work environment, you begin each day by blessing that space and everyone in it. Instead of coming home to a house that feels neutral or even stressful, you return to a consciously consecrated sanctuary that supports your peace and well-being. Instead of moving through your day in ordinary consciousness, you're continuously creating and inhabiting sacred space through your awareness. The transformation is often immediately noticeable. Family members comment that the house feels different. Co-workers remark on the improved atmosphere. Visitors sense something special about your space without being able to identify exactly what it is. You're not imagining these changes. You're witnessing the natural result of consciousness working through intention to elevate the vibrational quality of physical environments. What makes this practice so powerful is how it anchors higher consciousness in your daily routine. Instead of spirituality being something you do during meditation or prayer time, it becomes woven into every moment of your ordinary life. Making coffee becomes a sacred act when performed in consecrated space. Working at your computer becomes spiritual practice when your desk has been blessed as an altar of service. Even mundane activities like cleaning and organizing become forms of devotion when done with temple consciousness. The hidden truth that multiplies the impact is this: when you consistently consecrate your environment, you're not just changing how spaces feel, you're training yourself to recognize and create sacred space wherever you go. Your consciousness becomes portable temple consciousness. Hotels, rooms, restaurants, meeting rooms, even crowded public spaces begin to respond to the blessing awareness you carry with you. Now, I want to explore the most transformative aspect of this practice because there's a specific area of Blessing that has the power to completely revolutionize not just your environment, but every single aspect of your physical experience in this world. The most powerful secret that separates those who struggle through life from those who seem to glide effortlessly through challenges is this simple practice: bless before you act. Most people rush into their day, make decisions on impulse, react to situations without preparation, and then wonder why everything feels chaotic and difficult. But when you learn to prepare the invisible ground by blessing actions before taking them, you're working with spiritual law rather than against it, and the difference in outcomes is often miraculous. Think about what happens in the unseen realm when you pause before an important conversation and silently declare, "I bless this interaction. May it be filled with understanding, wisdom, and mutual benefit." You're not just hoping for a good outcome, you're literally programming the energetic field that will influence how that conversation unfolds. You're seeding the invisible with intention before the visible takes form. It's like a farmer blessing the soil before planting seeds, knowing that what happens beneath the surface determines what grows above ground. The transformation happens because every action emerges from a field of consciousness, and that field can be prepared or left to chance. When you bless your work before beginning it, when you consecrate your decisions before making them, when you dedicate your day to highest good before living it, you're aligning the invisible forces that shape your experience. You're inviting divine intelligence to work through your efforts rather than hoping it will rescue you from the results of unconscious action. Behind the scenes of every person who seems to have unusual success with minimal struggle, there's usually someone who has learned this secret of spiritual preparation. They don't just charge ahead hoping for the best. They create optimal conditions in consciousness before moving into action. They understand that the invisible realm is the creative matrix of all visible experience, and they take responsibility for programming that matrix with blessing rather than leaving it to unconscious default patterns. But here's where the practice becomes even more profound. There's something more powerful than even the most eloquent blessing, and that's silence filled with God. Conscious silence becomes prayer without words that heals through presence alone. When you pause in true stillness and simply allow divine consciousness to fill that quiet space, you're creating a field of transformation that doesn't require any verbal expression. The silence itself becomes a blessing that touches everything around you. The journey to understanding this deeper level requires recognizing that your presence, when consciously aligned, is more healing than any words you could speak. Think about times when you've been around someone whose very being felt peaceful, whose silence was more comforting than conversation, whose presence created a sense of safety and love without any effort on their part. They had learned to inhabit silence as sacred space, and that consecrated stillness became a blessing to everyone they encountered. What makes this revelation so immediately practical is how it transforms your relationship with both action and rest. Instead of constantly feeling like you need to do more, say more, or achieve more, you begin to value the quality of consciousness you bring to whatever you're doing. A single action, taken from blessed silence, often accomplishes more than hours of unconscious activity. A moment of consecrated stillness can shift the energy of an entire situation more effectively than lengthy explanations or arguments. The impact extends far beyond personal effectiveness. When you consistently operate from blessed consciousness and consecrated silence, you become a source of peace for everyone around you. Your presence begins to calm chaotic environments. Your silent blessing starts to heal wounded relationships. Your consecrated actions create ripple effects of harmony that extend far beyond what you can see or measure. Now, I want to explore the ultimate expression of this consciousness because there's a way of living that makes every moment, every breath, every simple act of existence into a continuous prayer of blessing that transforms not just your life, but the world around you. The most profound realization about spiritual power is this: blessed silence speaks through the soul in ways that transcend any verbal communication. Your mere presence, when anchored in divine consciousness, can bless without uttering a single word. Think about the people who have impacted your life most deeply. Often it wasn't what they said that transformed you, but something invisible they carried, some quality of being that emanated peace, love, or wisdom simply through their presence. They had learned to inhabit silence as sacred space, and that consecrated stillness became a healing force wherever they went. This transformation happens when you stop believing that you need to say or do something special to make a difference in the world. The hidden truth is that consciousness itself is the most powerful force for change, and when your consciousness is aligned with divine love, every space you enter begins to shift simply because you're there. Your blessed silence becomes like a tuning fork, helping everything around you find its natural frequency of harmony and peace. Behind the scenes of every unexplained healing, every sudden shift in group dynamics, every moment when conflict dissolves without apparent reason, there's often someone whose consciousness is serving as an anchor for higher vibration. They're not trying to fix anyone or manipulate any outcomes. They're simply being a clear channel for divine presence, and that presence does the work that words could never accomplish. But here's where this practice reveals its most transformative power. When you can extend this silent blessing to those who have hurt you, you unlock a level of healing that breaks generational cycles of pain. Blessing those who hurt you breaks pain cycles, not just in your own life, but in the entire lineage of suffering that flows through family systems, cultural patterns, and collective human experience. This decision to respond with blessing instead of resentment literally interrupts patterns that may have been repeating for generations. The journey to this level of spiritual maturity requires understanding that when someone hurts you, they're usually acting from their own unhealed wounds. Hurt people, as the saying goes. When you can see beyond their behavior to the pain that's driving it, when you can recognize that their actions are often desperate attempts to heal wounds they don't even understand, your perspective shifts from victimhood to compassion. You're not excusing harmful behavior, but you're refusing to add more poison to an already toxic situation. What makes this practice so revolutionary is how it frees you from the prison of resentment while simultaneously becoming a force for healing in the world. Every time you choose to bless instead of curse, to love instead of hate, to see soul instead of behavior, you're literally rewriting the script of human interaction. You're demonstrating a different way of being that gives others permission to heal, grow, and evolve beyond their current limitations. The impact extends far beyond the individual relationship. When you break a cycle of pain through blessing, you're affecting everyone connected to that energy system. Children who might have inherited patterns of resentment instead learn forgiveness. Friends who might have been influenced by your bitterness instead witness your grace. Future generations receive a different energetic legacy because you chose. Transformation over repetition. The hidden truth that changes everything is this: the person who hurt you is often your greatest spiritual teacher, though not in the way you might expect. They've shown you exactly where your consciousness still needs to expand, where your love still has conditions, where your peace still depends on external circumstances. When you can genuinely bless them, you've mastered something that most people spend lifetimes trying to learn. Now, I want to reveal the most profound application of this entire teaching, because there's a way to integrate all these principles into a continuous way of being that transforms not just specific situations, but your entire existence into a living prayer of blessing. Write in the comments, "I choose to break the cycle," if you're ready to transform your pain into the power that heals generations. The most devastating trap that keeps people stuck in cycles of suffering is one they create entirely within their own consciousness. Resentment is a self-imposed prison. Think about the hidden truth behind this metaphor. When you carry resentment towards someone who hurt you, you're essentially building a jail cell in your mind and then locking yourself inside it while handing the key to the very person who wounded you. They may have moved on completely, living their life without a second thought about what happened, while you remain trapped behind bars of your own making, replaying the injury over and over. The transformation that changes everything happens when you realize that blessing becomes the key that opens the door to freedom. Not their apology, not their recognition of wrongdoing, not their change in behavior. Your decision to bless is what unlocks the prison. This revelation is simultaneously liberating and challenging because it means your freedom doesn't depend on anyone else's actions or awareness. You've had the key the entire time, but you've been waiting for them to turn it. Behind the scenes of every profound personal transformation, there's a moment when someone stops waiting for external validation and starts taking responsibility for their own inner freedom. They recognize that holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. The only person being harmed by carrying that toxic energy is the one refusing to release it. When you finally understand this, blessing stops being about them and becomes entirely about your own liberation. But here's where the practice reveals its most alchemical power. Blessing the past transforms it into compost. Just as gardeners turn kitchen scraps and fallen leaves into rich soil that nourishes new growth, your conscious blessing transforms painful memories from spiritual waste into fertile foundation. Those experiences that once felt like soul swamps, dark, stagnant places where nothing good could grow, become the very ground from which your wisdom, compassion, and strength emerge. The journey to this level of spiritual mastery requires completely reframing your relationship with your personal history. Instead of seeing painful experiences as evidence of what's wrong with you or your life, you begin to recognize them as the raw material for your evolution. Every betrayal taught you discernment. Every loss showed you what truly matters. Every disappointment revealed inner strength you didn't know you possessed. When you bless these experiences, you're not pretending they didn't hurt. You're acknowledging that they served a purpose in your becoming. What makes this transformation so profound is how it changes the energetic signature of your memories. Instead of carrying your past as a collection of wounds that drain your vitality, you begin to hold it as a treasury of wisdom that fuels your growth. The same events remain in your history, but their meaning completely shifts. What once whispered, "You're damaged," begins to declare, "You're resilient." What once suggested, "You can't trust," starts to affirm, "You've learned to trust wisely." The impact extends far beyond personal healing. When you transform your pain into wisdom through blessing, you become living proof that redemption is possible. Your very presence carries the vibration of someone who has turned trauma into triumph, not by denying the darkness, but by discovering the light that was always there. People sense this transformation in you, even if they can't articulate what's different. The hidden truth that accelerates this entire process is understanding that your past doesn't need to be perfect to be valuable. In fact, often the most difficult experiences become the most fertile ground for spiritual growth when properly composted through blessing. The parts of your story you once wanted to hide become the chapters that offer the most hope to others walking similar paths. Now, I want to explore how this principle extends to the most fundamental relationship you'll ever have, the one with your own body. Because there's a specific way that blessing transforms your physical experience that most people never discover. Your relationship with your physical form is perhaps the most intimate and influential blessing practice you'll ever develop. Yet most people treat their body like a stranger, an enemy, or at best, a servant they barely acknowledge. The revolutionary truth that changes everything about health, vitality, and physical well-being is this: your body is a living temple. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, but literally. Every cell responds to consciousness and can be blessed into alignment with perfect health and harmony when you learn to speak to your physical form with the same reverence you would bring to sacred space. The hidden truth that modern medicine is only beginning to understand is this: the body listens to your thoughts with far more precision than any external instruction you could give it. Your physical condition reflects mental and emotional patterns you consistently hold, not just occasionally, but as your default inner dialogue. When you repeatedly think, "I'm so tired," your cells organize around fatigue. When you constantly say, "My back always hurts," you're programming chronic pain. When you habitually declare, "I never have enough energy," you're instructing your body to operate from depletion. But here's where the transformation becomes miraculous. When you begin blessing your body with the same conscious intention you would bring to prayer, everything starts to shift. Your cells don't distinguish between what you say out loud and what you think privately. They respond to the vibrational frequency of your consciousness. When you place your hands on your heart and sincerely declare, "I bless this heart that beats faithfully. I bless this body that serves me. I declare perfect health as my divine inheritance," you're not just speaking positive words, you're giving direct instructions to the intelligence that governs every biological function. The journey to understanding this principle requires recognizing that your body is not a machine that occasionally breaks down and needs fixing. It's a living expression of consciousness that's constantly reorganizing itself according to the mental and emotional patterns you feed it. Think about how different you feel when someone speaks to you with love versus criticism. Your body experiences that same energetic impact from your own thoughts about it. When you criticize your appearance, judge your limitations, or fear your symptoms, you're creating a hostile environment for healing to occur. Behind the scenes of every unexplained recovery, every spontaneous healing, every reversal of supposedly incurable conditions, there's usually someone who discovered how to shift their internal dialogue with their body. They stopped speaking to it from fear, frustration, and condemnation, and started blessing it from love, gratitude, and faith. They began treating their physical form as a sacred vessel deserving of reverence, rather than a burden to be endured. What makes this practice so immediately accessible is how quickly your body responds to genuine blessing. Unlike external circumstances that may take time to shift, your physical form is designed to respond instantly to consciousness. The moment you begin speaking to your body with appreciation instead of criticism, with blessing instead of complaint, with faith instead of fear, subtle changes begin happening at the cellular level. Energy increases, tension decreases, symptoms often diminish, and a general sense of well-being starts to emerge. The transformation extends far beyond physical health. When you learn to honor your body as a temple, you naturally start making choices that support that sacred space. You begin eating foods that nourish rather than deplete, engaging in movement that energizes rather than exhausts, creating environments that support peace rather than stress. You're not forcing yourself to be healthy, you're naturally expressing the reverence you feel for your physical temple. The impact ripples into every aspect of your life, because when you feel good in your body, everything else becomes possible. Creativity flows more freely. Relationships improve, work becomes less exhausting, challenges feel more manageable. Your physical vitality becomes the foundation that supports every other area of blessing in your experience. Now, I want to explore how this temple consciousness extends to every material aspect of your life, because there's a specific way to bless money, possessions, and resources that transforms them from sources of stress into channels of divine provision. One of the most misunderstood aspects of spiritual development is the relationship between consciousness and material possessions. Many people believe they must choose between spiritual growth and material well-being, as if blessing money, home and food somehow compromises their divine connection. But this creates an unnecessary and harmful split in consciousness. The hidden truth that transforms everything is this: you can bless material possessions without idolizing them, consecrating every aspect of your physical experience as channels of divine provision rather than obstacles to spiritual evolution. The revolutionary understanding that changes your entire relationship with the material world is recognizing that matter is not the enemy of spirit. The physical realm doesn't become corrupted through its inherent nature. It becomes corrupted through attachment, through the unconscious patterns of grasping, hoarding, and identifying your worth with what you possess. When you approach money, possessions, and resources from conscious blessing rather than unconscious attachment, they transform from sources of anxiety into expressions of divine abundance flowing through your experience. Think about how different it feels to receive money with gratitude versus desperation, to live in your home with appreciation versus taking it for granted, to eat your food with blessing versus mindless consumption. The same physical items are involved, but the consciousness you bring to them completely changes their impact on your spiritual and emotional well-being. When you bless your material resources, you're not worshipping them. You're recognizing them as temporary forms through which infinite provision expresses itself. The transformation happens when you understand that everything in your physical experience is neutral energy waiting to be consecrated or corrupted by the consciousness that interacts with it. Money becomes sacred when you handle it with appreciation and use it with wisdom. Your home becomes a temple when you inhabit it with presence and gratitude. Food becomes medicine when you bless it with awareness of its nourishing potential. The same items that could become sources of stress, greed, or unconsciousness become channels of divine connection when approached with proper understanding. Behind the scenes of every person who seems to have a healthy relationship with material abundance, there's someone who has learned to appreciate without grasping, to enjoy without clinging, to use resources wisely without defining themselves by what they possess. They understand that blessing their material experience doesn't make them materialistic. It makes them conscious participants in the flow of divine provision, rather than anxious strugglers competing for limited resources. The journey to this balanced consciousness requires releasing both extremes, neither rejecting the material world as inherently evil, nor grasping it as the source of security and identity. Instead, you learn to move through your physical experience with the awareness that everything you touch, use, or consume can become a channel for divine expression when blessed with proper consciousness. Your wallet becomes a symbol of trust in infinite provision. Your home becomes a sanctuary for peace and love. Your meals become communion with the intelligence that sustains all life. What makes this practice so immediately transformative is how it eliminates the spiritual guilt that many people carry around money and possessions. Instead of feeling like you need to apologize for having resources or pretend you don't need them, you learn to receive and use them with the same conscious gratitude you would bring to any other divine gift. You stop seeing material abundance as separate from spiritual abundance and start recognizing them as different expressions of the same infinite source. The impact extends far beyond personal peace with possessions. When you model conscious relationship with material resources, you demonstrate to others that it's possible to be both spiritual and practical, both grateful and responsible, both abundant and generous. You become living proof that matter and spirit are meant to work together rather than against each other. Now, I want to reveal the ultimate expression of everything we've been exploring, because there's a way of living that makes every moment, every breath, every simple daily activity into a continuous prayer that transforms not just your own experience, but contributes to the elevation of all consciousness. Write in the comments, "I bless with wisdom," if you're ready to transform your relationship with material abundance through conscious appreciation rather than unconscious attachment. The moment you understand how to approach your resources from spiritual law rather than human anxiety, everything about your financial experience transforms. Blessed money becomes servant of good rather than master that controls your emotions, decisions, and sense of security. When you consciously consecrate the money that flows through your life, whether it's a single dollar or thousands, you're shifting from scarcity consciousness that grasps and hoards to abundance consciousness that receives and circulates with trust in infinite provision. The hidden truth that revolutionizes your entire relationship with money is this: when resources are blessed, they flow from law rather than anxiety. Instead of money coming through stress, manipulation, or desperation, it begins arriving through natural channels, opportunities that align with your gifts, situations that serve everyone involved, paths that feel effortless rather than forced. You stop chasing money and start allowing it to find you through the vibrational alignment that blessing creates. Think about the profound shift this represents in your daily experience. Instead of checking your bank balance with fear, you approach your finances with gratitude for what's there and faith in what's coming. Instead of spending money with guilt or anxiety, you use it consciously, knowing that what you bless and release returns multiplied. Instead of viewing bills as burdens, you see them as opportunities to participate in the flow of exchange that keeps the economy of blessing circulating through countless lives. The transformation extends to the most basic daily ritual that most people perform unconsciously: eating. Food becomes medicine when blessed. Even the simplest meals transform into nourishment for body and spirit when approached with conscious appreciation. When you pause before eating and silently declare, "I bless this food, may it nourish every cell of my body and fill me with vitality," you're not performing empty ritual. You're literally changing the vibrational quality of what you're about to consume. Behind the scenes of every meal, there's an invisible story of countless hands that participated in bringing that nourishment to you. The farmers who planted seeds, the rain that watered crops, the sun that provided energy, the workers who harvested and transported, the earth itself that gave its minerals and nutrients. When you bless your food, you're acknowledging this miraculous chain of cooperation and expressing gratitude for the web of life that sustains your physical existence. The journey to this level of conscious living requires recognizing that every ordinary activity can become extraordinary when approached with blessing awareness. Your morning coffee becomes a ritual of awakening gratitude. Your lunch break becomes a meditation on abundance. Your dinner becomes communion with the intelligence that orchestrates the complex dance of nutrition and metabolism in your body. You're not changing what you eat, you're changing how you receive it. What makes this practice so immediately powerful is how it affects your relationship with your body and your environment. Food that's been blessed seems to digest more easily, satisfy more completely, and provide more lasting energy. Your body begins to trust that nourishment is coming and stops holding on to excess or creating cravings from anxiety. You naturally start choosing foods that support your highest well-being because you're eating from consciousness rather than compulsion. The impact ripples through every aspect of your material experience. When you bless your money, it flows more freely. When you bless your food, it nourishes more deeply. When you bless your possessions, they serve you better and last longer. You're not manipulating matter through blessing. You're aligning with the natural harmony between consciousness and form that exists when the ego stops interfering with divine order. Now, I want to explore the ultimate realization that ties together everything we've discovered, because there's a way of being that makes your entire existence into a continuous blessing that transforms not just your personal experience, but contributes to the healing and elevation of all life. Write in the comments, "I live from abundance," if you're experiencing this shift from anxiety to trust in your relationship with money and nourishment. The ultimate evolution of blessing consciousness takes you beyond techniques, beyond specific practices, beyond designated prayer times, into a realm where life itself becomes continuous prayer. This isn't about adding more spiritual activities to your day. It's about recognizing that advanced blessing creates a constant vibrational state of devotion, where every breath, every step, every moment of awareness becomes an expression of divine communion. You stop having a spiritual practice and start being a spiritual practice. The transformation that leads to this realization is profound yet subtle. Instead of thinking, now I'm going to bless this situation, you find yourself naturally seeing every experience through the lens of divine possibility. Instead of remembering to be grateful, gratitude becomes your default response to existence. Instead of trying to maintain positive thoughts, your consciousness naturally gravitates toward truth, beauty, and love, because that's simply who you've become through consistent blessing practice. Living as prayer means being the blessing rather than doing blessing activities. You become the point where heaven touches earth through your presence, not through effort or performance, but through the natural radiation of consciousness that has been purified and aligned through dedicated practice. Think about the profound shift this represents. You're no longer someone who occasionally connects with the divine. You're someone through whom the divine continuously expresses itself in the world. Behind the scenes of every person who seems to carry an inexplicable presence of peace, there's someone who has made this transition from blessing as technique to blessing as identity. They've discovered that when you consistently align your consciousness with divine truth, eventually there's no separation between your awareness and divine awareness. Your thoughts become God's thoughts, thinking through you. Your words become divine expression, speaking through you. Your actions become love in motion, manifesting through you. The journey to this level of integration requires understanding that you're not trying to become something you're not. You're remembering what you've always been beneath the layers of conditioning, fear, and forgetfulness. Every human being is already a point where heaven and earth meet. Every consciousness is already a channel for divine expression. The blessing practice simply clears away the obstacles that have been blocking this natural flow. What makes this realization so revolutionary is how it transforms your entire relationship with existence. You stop feeling like you're struggling through life, hoping for occasional divine intervention, and start experiencing yourself as divine intervention in continuous action. You stop waiting for God to show up and start recognizing that God shows up as you when your consciousness is clear and aligned. The impact extends far beyond personal transformation. When you embody continuous blessing consciousness, you become a healing presence wherever you go. Your very existence begins to lift the vibration of every space you enter, every person you encounter, every situation you participate in. You're not trying to fix or change anything. You're simply being a clear channel for the love and wisdom that wants to express itself through human consciousness. The hidden truth that accelerates this entire process is understanding that this state isn't reserved for saints or spiritual masters. It's the natural destiny of anyone willing to consistently choose blessing over cursing, love over fear, truth over illusion. Every moment offers you the opportunity to either strengthen this consciousness or scatter it, to either deepen into being the blessing or fall back into seeking the blessing from outside yourself. Now, I want to share the most practical steps for integrating everything we've explored into a complete system of transformation, because there's a specific progression that can take you from wherever you are right now to embodying this continuous blessing consciousness in your daily life. Write in the comments, I am the blessing, if you can feel this shift happening within you, if you're beginning to recognize yourself as a channel for divine expression rather than someone seeking it. The ultimate realization that transforms ordinary existence into extraordinary service is this: You can make your whole life a walking blessing where every gesture, silence, and gaze becomes a channel of divine peace. This isn't about performing spiritual theatrics or trying to appear holy. It's about recognizing that when consciousness is sufficiently purified and aligned, even the most mundane activities become expressions of divine love flowing through human form. Think about the profound implications of this understanding. Your smile becomes a blessing that lifts someone's spirit. Your silence becomes a sanctuary where anxious minds can find rest. Your very presence in a room begins to shift the atmosphere from chaos to calm, from fear to peace, from separation to connection. You're not doing anything special. You're simply being what you truly are, when all pretense and unconsciousness fall away. The transformation that leads to this state happens through what seems like a paradox. The more you practice specific blessing techniques, the less you need them. The more consciously you bless particular situations, the more your entire being becomes a continuous blessing. It's like learning to play an instrument. At first, you focus intensely on individual notes and techniques, but eventually, the music flows through you so naturally that you forget you're playing. Behind the scenes of this evolution is a fundamental shift in identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who occasionally does spiritual things and start recognizing yourself as spirit temporarily doing human things. This isn't arrogance or grandiosity. It's the humility of remembering your true nature. When you walk through the world from this awareness, every step becomes a prayer, every breath becomes praise, every interaction becomes an opportunity for divine love to touch another soul. The journey to embodying walking blessing consciousness requires understanding that transformation happens through integration, not addition. You're not trying to become more spiritual on top of who you already are. You're allowing who you truly are to express itself more fully through every aspect of your human experience. Your work becomes worship, your conversations become communion, your challenges become chances to demonstrate that divine peace is unshakable. What makes this state so immediately accessible is that it doesn't require perfect conditions or special circumstances. You can be a walking blessing in traffic jams, during difficult conversations, while dealing with everyday frustrations in the midst of global chaos. The external situation becomes irrelevant because you're anchored in something that no circumstance can disturb. If you've made it this far with me, something profound has shifted in your consciousness during our time together. You didn't just watch a video, you participated in a transmission, a remembering of the divine power that has always lived within your voice, your presence, your very being. The fact that you stayed through this entire journey tells me your soul recognizes these truths as more than concepts. They're calling you home to who you really are. This is exactly the kind of transformative content I create for this community of awakening souls. If these insights have touched something deep within you, I'd love to have you join us by subscribing to the channel. Every video is designed to meet you wherever you are on your spiritual journey and offer practical wisdom that actually works in your daily life. This isn't just spiritual entertainment, it's a pathway to genuine transformation. If this message found you at exactly the right moment, if it felt like it was meant specifically for you, write in the comments, "This message was meant for me." When I see those words, I know we've made the kind of heart connection that goes beyond just sharing information. We've shared a moment of recognition, soul to soul. And if you felt that connection, that sense of coming home to truth, go ahead and let me know with a like. It's a simple way to say, yes, this matters to me, and it helps ensure this message reaches other souls who are ready to remember their power. Your journey into blessing consciousness is just beginning, and there's so much more we can explore together. There's a video right here that complements this topic perfectly, diving even deeper into how these principles transform your daily experience. Click and continue with me over there. I have a feeling you're going to love what we discover next. Until then, remember, You are the blessing this world has been waiting for.